The Forgotten Mermaid. All lost hearts may be redeemed. By Gregga J. Johnn. 7. The survivors in the hut awoke with a start as one of them yelled out in shock. Midday sunbeams pierced their sleepy eyes, and the shouting continued. The 4 who had returned from last night's adventure were grumpy with the rude awakening and muttered curses under their breath. But the ill sailors all began laughing almost maniacally and would not be ignored. The one closest to the fire was leaping about his other ill mates, shouting and pointing at them. As conscious thought seeped out of sleepy shells, the companions were in wonder of themselves. Those who had been injured with fever or scratch could find no cause for unwellness upon their person, and the 2 who had lost limbs and were near death found themselves still in deep pain. But their appendages no longer bled because they were in fact partially regrown. This caused great fear in the superstitious, and one of the victims looked at his partially intact leg as if he might cut it off for blaspheming new life. "Poseidon be praised!" shouted the first waker in glee. This be a strange happening. One of the first 5 was quite dubious. The 7 ill mates, who had spent their sleep dreaming delusions of night nurses, were transfixed by the health of this magical place. Thoughts of eternal youth fountains and money-making tours of such wonders began bubbling up in their greedy souls. "We must discover the secret of this divine place." Scranton, the first to wake, was ecstatic to be in full health again. "What makes you think it's divine?" warned Terrigal. He had already determined to keep last night's violet vision of feminine beauty all to himself. "How can such healing be anything other than divine?" Tungsten agreed with his mate Scranton. They always stuck together. Tang-Tak continued staring bug-eyed and wailing at his partially regrown leg. He was near mad with shock and began scrambling away from his appendage as if it were chasing him. Package grabbed him with both arms, the stub of his once-severed wrist still slowly forming and growing. "Simmer, Tang-Tak," he soothed his horrified mate. "It be well with us this morning." Tang-Tak could only scream and howl as the regrowing wrist that now restrained him was so close to his face. Barrel took matters into his own hand and punched the loudmouth so as to silence him into the blackness of knockout. Barrel never failed in his abilities to accomplish knockout. In the sudden silence the shipmates all stared at each other, taking stock of the miracle imparted to them. Faringdale, the ship's first mate, spoke in response to all their expectations. "We need to stay in the groups that we were in when we arrived, just for order's sake," he stated. Digby was indignant. "We ain't on the ship no more, sir," he sarcastically emphasized. "So who put you in charge?" Terrigal backed up his fellow explorer. "I think that only makes sense." Digby retorted, "You would." Dong clapped his hands to get their attention. He'd also been with the explorer's crew and was eager to set off on his own to find his lavender lady, so he thought it best to distract the others with the most immediately pressing matter. He pointed to the empty sleep space. "Dong is right." Munkery, Terrigal's twin, shuffled his belongings about as if he were determined to do something. "We need to find Mugby." Package, who had eased his way out from under the unconscious Tang-Tak, accused. "He was with yous last. What'd you do with him?" "Now isn't the time to be accusing our fellows with unknown mischief, Package." Dr. Scranton tried to reason. "I think Faringdale is on the right track." "Not," he rebutted the almost outburst of negativity, "not because he is in charge, but because having order may just keep us alive longer in this foreign environment." "Thanks, Doc." Terrigal puffed up, justified. "But," added the ship's surgeon, "equal share in all things seems only fair, as we are all equally shipwrecked here." Munkery and Terrigal exchanged subconscious support, and Terrigal spoke to them both. "What do you mean, equal share?" "Yeah," Munkery chimed in. Equal share of nothing is still nothing, so's I dunno what you's on about. Tungsten, the ship's chaplain, agreed with the doctor. Mates, we cannot deny that something miraculous is occurring here. He looked about the crew. We must also assume that there is opportunity for wondrous happenings. He paused again, as was his ecumenical habit. Let us join together in brotherhood and agree that whatever else we find here is to be equally shared among us all. Galley coughed on the apple he was eating, and Barrel agreed. Mates, he looked around at the dishevelled survivors. We're suddenly all mates because you are finally equal to us in having nothing then, is it? Dong joined in the disgust, grunting with his open, tongueless mouth and expressive arm gestures wagging in argument. Package stood next to Barrel and Dong in unity, as Galley, continuing silent as always, showed his support by offering apples to each of the mates except the two men of distinguished learning. Farringdale spoke again. That seems clear to me, then. He began pointing and ordering. Digby, Barrel, and Galley, you guys go and find more wood for fires and see if there's anything else we missed on the beach in the wreckage. Package and Dong, you stay here with Tang-Tak in case he tries to lob off his leg again. Oh, and wait to see if Mugby finds his way back here. The twins and I will go back to the light bowl and see if we can find out more about the weirdness going on here, okay? Out of habit, everyone disagreed with the first mate. You two. Farringdale pointed to the gentlemen, Dr. Scranton and Reverend Tungsten. We're gonna need to eat something when we all get back. Why don't you serve us tonight? There was a rousing giggle among the lesser men, but the gentlemen readily agreed and set about to go fishing. The siren licked her lips from her seat outside the chimney. She'd been sunning herself on the cliff edge side of the hut. She always liked fishing. Further out over the ocean, morning broke above the pursuit with bright care, and everyone found themselves on deck in the sunshine. Captain Deleuze gave aid to the preacher's wife as her weak young husband was carried out to the deck and walked slowly around upon unsteady legs. "Does your belly fare better in the sunshine and clear air, my beloved?" his wife inquired. "Indeed it does, dear heart." The missionary set himself upon a barrel near Davies and requested, "I wish to be useful in my immobility, Davies. Can you share your knotting knowledge with me that I might keep maintenance with you?" Davies nodded and somewhat silently began instructing the weak fingers in the ways of weaving rope. "Bailey!" the preacher suddenly called out. "Who?" Bryce looked at him as though he was still delusional. "My wife, Bailey. Where did she go?" Bryce stared at him, as if he'd heard a magical word for the first time. Then he stuttered, I think she went down to fetch Mehmedie's breakfast baked for you." The preacher smiled and breathed with deep vigour. "Excellent! This clean sea air is making me want food again." The captain set off a moment, then paused and turned back. "What is your first name?" he asked, baffled with himself that he had gone this far without ever inquiring. "Barnabas," said the missionary. "Barnabas and Bailey," repeated the captain. "Yes, we two are matched well in tongue and temper," sighed the love-struck preacher man. Bryce partially mumbled, "So it would seem." Derrick stood by the steering column and called, "Where will the wind take us today, do you think, sir?" "Closer to where she wills, good friend." Bryce breathed deeply and moved to stand at the very prow with his back to all behind him. "To where she wills," the captain repeated to himself.